The United States will elect a new president, the 45th, on November 8th, 2016. And the outcome of the U.S. presidential election will naturally have a huge impact on international politics as well as the global economy. On today's program, we're delighted to have a conversation with Professor Wang Kao-Cheng, who's currently the Dean of the College of International Studies at Tamkang University here in Taipei, to share with us his views and insights on the upcoming contest between Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton. Welcome to our program, Professor Wang.
Hello, Ray Guo, everyone.
Yes,
okay.
Well, it's a delight to have you on the program, Professor. Like I said, Professor Wang, the U.S. presidential election will happen on November 8th. And this is going to have a huge impact, no matter who wins. And tell us a little bit about the significance of once every 4 years, the U.S. presidential election. Please.
Certainly, because the United States is still the largest and the strongest nation in the world, still play a leading role in the world. Obviously, U.S. policy, including its domestic policy, especially foreign policy, national security policy, will impact the world development, including economic development, security situation, even so-called non-traditional security issues in almost everywhere. So I think that although it's only a presidential of the United States, but it is widely concerned and watched out by the audience all around the world.
Yes, and especially this election in many ways seem a little bit, quote-unquote, unconventional. Let's start off with, talking about the Republican Party. And before the election started, the primary season began, if you and I had a conversation like this one about a year ago, that we'll probably say that the former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, will be the frontrunner for the Republican Party. Yeah. But that didn't happen. Mr. Jeb Bush dropped out, in fact, before the Iowa caucuses earlier in 2016. What was the reason? How come Jeb Bush turned out not to be the frontrunner that most in the Republican Party supported?
I think that, of course, Jeb Bush was predicted probably would be the front-runner or even the nominee of the Republican Party, as his father and brother did.
Yes.
Maybe because he inherited so many expectations, so everyone will closely examine his performance. But I think from his performance during the primary, and also before the primary, there's some campaign and debate on the TV. It seems to turn out that Jeb is a little bit, I think, too mild, too rational. I think he is kind of a traditional politician. He is an experienced politician. He experienced. So how he behave like experienced politician? Okay, he stated his policy. He is nicely, gently expressed his way. But it seems that doesn't to be welcomed in this particular presidential election. It seems the American has changed a lot. I think maybe due to its economic difficulty. I think the voters' attitude has changed, especially from the Republican side, because they have been on the so-called opposition party for 8 years. So I think they're looking for a quite strong candidate who can lead the party and launch a strong attack on the Democratic side. So Jeb Bush, because his attitude doesn't seem to fulfill the Republicans' the members' expectation. And also, nobody will expect, but there's some kind of candidate like Donald Trump to jump out. He a different kind of person, in contrast with Jeb Bush.
Yes.
But unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, his style seems the more fit with the many Republican supporters' attitude. That's why I think Jeb Bush dropped out earlier.
Okay. And Professor Wang, one thing that you mentioned just now, very interestingly, is regarding the overall environment in the United States has changed. Because nowadays that we see a lot of the domestic tensions, between, races, between the different ethnic groups, the African Americans, the white Americans, the Asian Americans, and other, people of minority. And certainly there's been a number of unfortunate incidents. For example, in the inner cities in many parts of the U.S., the police officers and the locals have gone into, a type of serious and divisive confrontation. Right. So do you think that with the changing domestic environment, in addition to the problems on the economy, do you think that's also the reason why the Republican Party during the primary season had, different considerations that allow different type of a candidate to be their eventual nominee, that is Donald Trump? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's partially true. We know that actually during the primary, those who so-called fundamentalists are more eager to participate the primary and vote in the primary. So each party, we have seen that kind of phenomenon. Those people who are more, linked to the fundamental principles of the party probably will get a support in the primary. And we know that Republicans traditionally represent so-called the middle and upper class. And also they are so-called swamp centered. In other words, most Republicans supposed to tend to be white. No matter woman or man in the party. So I think that's two reasons give, a person like Trump, who speech, who sometimes attack the foreign immigrant, attacked some used bad words, insult women and minorities. So that, to some extent, I think stimulate, support from the Republican Party. But another, I think, interesting phenomenon is that actually Donald Trump also attract many so-called blue-collar supporters, and even including supporters traditional who probably will vote for Democratic. But we know that the blue collars, actually, they also faced, I think, economic difficulty. They're worrying there about a job. So probably they have some kind of, the hatred against, foreign immigrant and the workers. So I think that's also part of the reason why Donald Trump, although he's very blunt and arrogant attitude and worst, but will get still, that seems to quite support from the grassroots of the Republican Party.
Okay. And given the fact that Donald Trump has been very vocal, has been very assertive on many of his policies, including, like you said, on immigration, and also on particularly relations with the major nations of the world, including Russia. And that has caused a lot of controversy, in the United States. What do you think, no matter what happens on November 8th, what do you think will be the Donald Trump legacy to the Republican Party and also to the U.S. domestic politics?
Yeah, I think Trump will have a legacy on the Republican Party. Especially Trump's, his attitude regarding the immigrant. it's very interesting because the United States is supposed to be a so-called free country that will welcome immigrants from around the world. But it seems the Trump's time that the U.S. need a tight control on the immigrant. I think that, but it's strange. I mean, unfortunately, that get quite support from the grassroots of the Republican Party. I think that even he is not elected. I think that kind of the idea and attitude will still remain within the Republican Party and even the United States. That will affect the future's the new president policy regarding these issues. And also, Trump's also asked for that U.S. allied should, that bear their burdens, pay more for their own securities, defense. I think that will also have some legacy on the Republican Party and the new president, especially during the economic difficult period of the United States. I think people probably will buy that idea. Even they will not abandon their life. Probably they will ask the new president to push the U.S. allies to, bear more responsibility for their own defense.
Okay. Professor Wang, let's now shift focus onto the Democratic Party. Of course, we have the nominee, former senator from New York, Hillary Clinton, as the party's nominee. This is very significant politically and historically to many Americans because Hillary Clinton is the first major party nominee of a female, nature. And then, this is a, huge breakthrough for U.S. domestic politics in many ways. What do you think is the significance of Hillary's nomination this time? Please.
Yeah, certainly if you examined her the meaning of the being nominated from this perspective, that means a lot. Because although U.S. so-called very democratic country, but still traditional seems that the women's right is not so equal in the United States. The women have a voting rights even in the 20th century. They get the full voting rights. And although the law allowed, but the culturally seems that they still have some, biased against the woman to play a major leading role, especially the highest command of the United States.
Exactly.
So we haven't seen that woman to be the president in the United States. But political has evolved a lot. In the Democratic side, we have seen that black men get nominated, and get elected president, the current president, Mr. Obama. So that if this time that Hillary Clinton, of course, he already was nominated by the major party. So that's a big breakthrough and achievement for that party and for the U.S. politics and for U.S. the democracy. If he can be elected, then she will make a new historic record to be the first female president of the United States. I think that means a lot because we have seen that around the world today, in many other countries, even including developing countries, we have seen that female play national leaders. But how come the strongest and the so-called most democratic country hasn't generated a female leader? So if this time Hillary Clinton can be elected as the president, then that will certainly will boost U.S. the image in the world.
Yes, indeed. And we understand that Hillary Clinton, of course, coming back from a family of politics. Her husband, Bill Clinton, of course, was a former president of the U.S. And she has been also elected as a former senator from the state of New York, and she's been very vocal, very visible on a number of different issues. And but after being in politics for so many decades, there are also liabilities. For example, the U.S. press has been reporting about the connections between the Clinton Foundation and also the time when Hillary Clinton was the U.S. Secretary of State. And what do you think that, in the minds of most American voters, was somebody, with a lot of experience in politics, yes, but also after years in the political arena, there's bound to be some liabilities. How do you think the American voters will react to Hillary Clinton, in addition to the fact that she is the first female presidential nominee from a major political party?
Yeah. So I think that being the first female president nominee of the major party, although I think has some meaning, political meaning, and that also encouraged some people to support her. But I don't think that's helped Clinton a lot.
Okay.
Currently, I think he's the high popularity, partially caused by the other candidates' dislike rate, Donald Trump. So people has no better choice, so they choose Hillary Clinton. But Clinton herself also has some liability, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
First, she doesn't think like a so-called traditional image of female. I mean, although she's experienced, but she also seems very ambitious.
Yes.
She is the first lady of the Bill Clinton.
Yes.
But we know that her husband have some affairs with the intern. But during that period of time, that Hillary's performance seems not like a real feminist. He seems to choose to be remain silent on this. Many people, that suspect, criticize that maybe she's aiming to keep her power and position. And then she ran for senator, right? Right now she ran for the president. That's good for public service. But on the other hand, it shows that she is quite ambitious. Okay. Secondly, that her other behavior seems like you mentioned, her connection with the establishment. The Clinton couple's connection with those Taiwan, either domestic part in United States or around the world.
Yes.
It seems that after they retired from the White House, their wealth increased rapidly. So that's also caused some suspicious by outside about the inner reason why they can get so rich in such a short period of time. And the newest, issue is that she, during her serving as the state of secretary, she chose to use her primary email to deal with some public affairs. That shows that her, some kind of assertive attitude. Okay. I mean, in other words, she would not obey the public regulation because almost every state of the secretary also follow the rule. They should use the public email account to exchange views with others. So either whether she did not obey the law, or she might hiding something for her, in private affairs by using her position of state secretary. That's why, still have some people doubt about the integrity of the Hillary Clinton.
Yes, and when we talk about the Democratic Party in this year's presidential election, we have to mention Senator Bernie Sanders, and he is a senior gentleman but the age did not seem to matter because he was able to attract a lot of support, especially among the young, supporters in the Democratic Party. And what do how do you explain the Bernie Sanders phenomenon?
Yeah. I think Bernie's phenomenon a little bit similar to Donald Trump.
Okay.
They are also called the anti-establishment political figure. Because first, I think U.S. has experienced a long period of economic difficulty.
Yes.
And at the same time, the economic equality seems to deteriorating. I mean, the inequality in income in the United States has widened, especially the middle and the lower class, young people, the working class.
Okay.
So probably they will ask more economic fairness, social justice. But Sanders also exactly touch upon that demand. So he argued and demanded for more, social justice and fairness in the U.S. economy and social policies to take care of those people. That's why he can get a lot of young people to support him.
And finally, before we end this part of the program, Professor Wang, one interesting development in the campaign is that now we have the two nominees from the major parties, but neither one of them is very well liked by the the American public, and a lot of people don't believe that either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump is trustworthy, or they don't like either one of them for other reasons. How do you then explain that in a very stable two-party system, that you have two, at least on paper, qualified candidates to run for the presidency, and still the voting public does not seem to like either one of them very much? How do you explain that?
I think the systems are working for that because they do not, jump out by the popular voting surveys, and the party will decide who will be nominated. Actually, they go through that their, nominate procedure. In other, they have to go through their party's own primary or caucus to get enough support.
Yes.
Like I said, during this kind of process, first, those people who is the more, fundamentalist might get the strong support.
Yes.
Second, who is more famous, like during the Republican side, they don't seem to have a more strong candidate than Hillary Clinton because she ran for that job 8 years ago, right? And then he served as the state of secretary. She enjoyed also support by the current President Obama, so that's why she became the candidate of Democratic. In other words, she was supported by the Democratic, but it may not be supported by the non-democratic. But on the Republican side is another more interesting phenomenon. I mean, Donald Trump in the beginning is not, very, well known. People know him for other reasons, not for his
for his TV show,
and for his and the business. So that all because I think that. The current United States situation and the party's conditions. In other words, no other more strong candidate can beat Donald Trump, and he emerged from this primary process. That's why we get these two candidates.
Good. And Professor Wang, thank you for sharing with us your insights and perspectives on the U.S. presidential election so far. But a lot of people criticize the U.S. Presidential election in the sense that the election process seemed to be skewed towards in favor of people with wealth, with a lot of resources. It's the primaries. If you don't have the money. You cannot, advertise, promote your ideas and things. And if you don't have the, establishment contact, that you're not able to emerge in the primary and also the caucus process. What is your view?
Yeah, certainly that's true. Basically, because U.S. is such a huge nation.
Yes.
And it's the policies, including its nomination policies and the official elections, the policy, all are counted by state to state. So as the candidate, it's very difficult in the beginning. You have to get through the process and emerge from the primary. So it's almost every people who participate in the primary, they almost all have some, establishment.
Yes.
Either at least they are senators of a House of Representatives or governors, or even you have to be a successful businessman, or TV anchor, like Donald Trump.
Yes.
At least you have to enjoy some popularity and fame. And especially in the beginning, you have to, make campaign. Usually, especially in the United States, the TV, broadcasting or other ways of broadcasting count a lot. You have to pay for that. Although thanks for the new development or so-called mass media, people might use other ways to get their popularity support. But in the beginning, you still have some base. But of course, not everyone has to be so rich. For example, 8 years ago, Obama started as a senator, but he already enjoys some, popularity. But he used very successfully of the mass media to get his support. And in the United States, it's like some bandwagon effect. Once you emerge from the primary, you become the front runner.
Yes.
The donors, they probably will follow up and devote their money to you, so that you can get the support.
All right. And interestingly, that you mentioned about the social media. We understand that back in the 2008, 8 years ago, the election, President Obama was very effective in using social media, sending out his messages like, yes, we can, and change. And certainly that have motivated a lot of the young people, people, who maybe were voting for the first time back in 2008. But this year, in the 2016 campaign, other than Senator Bernie Sanders, we haven't really seen the role for social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or others, that really playing a very significant role to get the young people or people who spend a lot of time on social media to know that their candidates and their messages. So how do you explain this? The difference that we see 8 years apart is primarily because of the candidates, or is it because that social media is no longer a very effective, means for political campaigns? What do you think?
I think both counts. First, I think right now every candidate, with no exception, probably will know they should rely on mass media.
Yes.
So I am sure that every candidate will use mass media, but it's not already a sacred weapon. Everybody will use that. So probably every voter will get mass media's message from different candidates. So there's no very exceptional one who can use very more efficiently. Secondly, I think it's because the message that the candidate wanted to devote to. Even you have that too, but you have to make issues, you have to make the idea attractive to people. So like you said, Sanders, he's not rich, but he can use that mass media. Still, attract many supporters, especially young supporters behind him to get his campaign. But Hillary, I don't think that because she has to inherit Obama's legacy, but she did not, divide herself away from the Obama. So she doesn't seem to, bring that many new idea. It's the other guys, Donald Trump, on the contrary. I think he brings some new idea, although very controversial idea. But that aroused many media's attention. I noticed personally he use Twitters a lot. And also because of his controversial words and the policy, that also attract many discussion among the mass media. I think that's the reason why he can win the primary in the Republican and also right now enjoy still the high support in the general election because he can successfully use the mass media, including traditional and non-traditional way, to spread his idea.
All right. And we say the United States has a very stable two-party system, the Democratic Party and also the Republican Party. So what do you think is the prospect if we have third-party nominees participating in the presidential election? Do you think it's likely for these candidates to get their views or ideas across, or even, winning some significant votes?
Under this current presidential electoral system, it's difficult for the first party to win the presidential election because it counts state by state, and it's used we so-called winner take all. You have to be the first runner in each state raced. So as the third party, it turned out to be or independent candidate. It turned out to be a minority in each state. So you cannot easily win the state's vote. No mention that that all over the United States. I think unless the two parties candidates too weak, too unpopular, and the parties the functions failed a lot. Otherwise, it's very difficult for independent or third parties candidate to win the presidential election. What they can do is that they might, because they still get some votes, they might influence one of the two major parties candidates the possibility of get elected if their position is closer to the two major parties. That might divide the voters.
All right. And we're not likely to see a Ross Perot or a Michael Bloomberg in this election. And given the fact that you have two dominant parties and the two dominant party system will likely continue, what do you think that maybe, you see a lot of the anti-establishment, sentiment, as you mentioned, already taking place in the U.S. Would you think that maybe eventually in the future that you are likely to see a formidable independent candidate to challenge the stable two-party system? What do you think?
Yeah, that might be possible, but it seems that those candidates still go through the party's mechanism, like Sanders. Like I said, he bring out many challenges, idea to the current policy and the system. But still, he still goes through the Democratic Party process to win the nomination. And Donald Trump, certainly he can run as the independent.
Exactly.
She's rich, and you say that Ross Perot, Bloomberg, but obviously Trump doesn't want to repeat their lessons. So he decided to join into the one of the party, and he choose the Republican Party to get through this process.
Okay.
So I think if the parties supported still there and the party's organization still strong, it's still very difficult for anyone who can just use idea to upset the two parties' base.
And Professor Wang, we know in any election in the United States, in Taiwan, at the end of the day, the policy substance still matters to many, many voters. And what are some of the leading issues in the U.S. presidential election? And you have already mentioned the economy. Of course, people, we study politics. There's an axiom going, people vote with their pocketbooks, all right? Which candidate can offer a better economic future, can make sure that, I'll be richer at the end of the 4 years or 8 years. Certainly that would be the the candidate and the party that I support. Do you think the economic policy of the two candidates, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, are much similar or different? In what ways? Please.
Traditionally, they should be different.
Yes.
But with this type of race, people will get to win the so-called the central position, which is the majority of the voters. So their policy will gradually tend to emerge and become similar. For example, about the foreign trade, Donald Trump argued that the U.S. should be a very strong in negotiating a good trade pact with foreigners, including many of its big trade partners, especially China. So Trump said that if he becomes the president, he will renegotiate with many countries regarding the trade deals.
Okay.
And also he attacked and opposed what current President Obama's series promoted, the so-called the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is kind of like a free trade agreement. So ironically, the Republican is a party which should support the free trade, but Trump asserts that U.S. should have a tough trade policies, and that influenced Hillary Clinton. Clinton, in her service as the state Secretary of the State, she also actively promoted TPP. But in seeing that many U.S. voters, especially the blue collars, the voters, and the middle class, they all oppose the TPP. And she changed her tone, say she would not also support the TPP. And secondly, because the influence Sanders, she has the very tight race against Hillary during the Democratic primary. So when the Hillary Clinton got the nomination, she said she will include many of Sanders' idea of policy. I think that including that economic policy. So she said that she will take care of the many small and the medium, the business, and the laborers. So I think their policies tend to be a little bit similar with the other side, Donald Trump. Trump, I think, is a kind of anti-tradition of the Republican Party. Republicans should take care of the big business, but this time Donald Trump also, assert that the government should take care of the labor class and the middle class needs. So I think their policy tend to be similar.
And people often say for U.S. presidential election, the most important issues are domestic issues. You have already mentioned about the economy. Another issue is regarding homeland security. There's been a number of terrorist attacks in the U.S., and this is, of course, giving candidates like Donald Trump, the leverage, the opportunity to try to, talk tough about some of the policies and measures that he will use, for example, against ISIS. Do you think such tough talk will continue, even, you know, in the case that he is elected president?
He will continue to enact that policy. The reason why Donald Trump can get, such strong support and defeat the traditional politician like Jeb Bush, because he catches some of the current issues of the United States due to that the IS attacked in the Middle East, who captures some American hostages and they capitalized their heads, and also some similar terrorist attack within the United States. So that aroused many strong fear of the United voters. So I think when Donald Trump said that he will have the more tight control of the immigrant, especially the Islamic immigrant, immediately he get a lot of support from the American voters. And even right now, he still argued that he can have more effective policies to defeat IS and protect the U.S. citizens' safety in the United States. I think that once he got elected, certainly he will enact that policy.
Pursue that. All right. Yeah, for sure. And finally, Professor Wang, let's talk about the U.S., China, and also Taiwan trilateral relations. First, U.S.-China. These are two leading economies of the world, two dominant powers in the world. What do you think the relationship would be after the election is over?
Depends on who gets in. get elected. But the general tendency, I think that either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, once they got elected, they will be more tough than the current Obama administration in dealing with in China. Certainly, Trump will be tougher, especially regarding the trade issues. So I think he will demand more concession from China. Clinton, she has the reputation of being tough with the mainland China, especially regarding the human rights issues. And right now, because of the impact of Donald Trump policies, even she got elected, I think she will also pursue a tougher trade policies with mainland China.
All right. How about U.S.-Taiwan? We understand that, United States is the most important ally for Taiwan. And we have deep-rooted relationship in military and then also in economic and political domains. How do you think the relationship would change if Donald Trump gets elected or Hillary Clinton gets elected?
I think there will be some difference. If Hillary Clinton get elected, basically, I think he will follow up the Obama administration's the so-called rebalancing toward Asia policies. In that policies, the U.S. will seek for support from its allies and non-allies in this region, including Taiwan. So I think also Hillary Clinton once said Taiwan is an important partner to U.S. economy and security. So I think she will continue to strengthen the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. Donald Trump, I think, is quite unpredictable. Regarding many foreign policy, he is new, and he generated many, many new ideas, or some called naive ideas. So I think I worry about that because he is kind of business and very practical. In dealing with mainland China, certainly he will be tough regarding the trade issue and get more economic interest from mainland China. But for that bilateral relations, as a business, everything is tradable. especially about Taiwan. I'm tend to worry about Donald Trump's policy toward Taiwan once he got elected. Maybe I worry that whether he will sacrifice Taiwan's interest in his making deal with mainland China to seeking or to maximize U.S. most or best interest.
Okay. And Professor Wang, we have about 30 seconds left. We know the race is very tight between these candidates. If you were a betting man, I know you're not, but how would you think the election outcome would be on November 8th? Who's likely to win? And there are some polls saying Hillary's ahead by a few percentage points, but what do you think?
It's very unwise to make a prediction about such a tight race, especially in front of the TV. I think that many things probably will change the outcome, many uncertainty. But if the current tendency continue, I think probably Donald Trump will win the president election with the margin
very small.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Professor Wang, for being a special guest on Taiwan Outlook today. Certainly enjoy the conversation, and thank you for sharing your insights on this very important election to the world. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you for watching our program today. I'll see you next time on MacroView Television. Thank you.